This is the Convene podcast. My name is Maggie, Digital Media Editor. As funding and support for diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives decline in the U.S., event professionals consider the consequences for meetings, destinations, and associations. How is the DEI backlash impacting the events industry? Written and read by Barbara Palmer, Deputy Editor of Convene.
Last June, after the U.S. Supreme Court banned the use of race-based affirmative action in college admissions, it set off an explosion of anti-DEI bills and extinguished DEI initiatives, said Jolene Zhang, a Seattle-based Asian inclusivity consultant. The backlash against DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, is everywhere, said Zhang, who moderated a July 28 webinar. The state of DEI, is it dying or is it evolving? Which was organized by the PCMA Capital chapter. During the webinar, Zhang recited a long list of companies that have made changes to DEI programs, ranging from Facebook, Google, and Zoom, to the 86-year-old Tennessee-based Tractor Supply Company. Investment in DEI also is waning. In 2022, 1/3 of corporations made investments in personnel and strategies related to DEI, a number, Zhang reported, that Forrester Research predicted would drop to 20% in 2024. In the association world, the Society of Human Resource Management, SHRM, made headlines earlier this year when it announced it would drop the word equity from its diversity and inclusion program. On its website, SHRM quoted research that showed that 53% of those surveyed linked DEI to business polarization. During the 90-minute webinar, Zhang, panelists, and webinar participants wrestled with questions about what the changes would mean for events and destinations in the U.S., where DEI has become highly politicized. At midsummer, Zhang said, state legislators had introduced 85 bills across 28 states that would limit or eliminate DEI initiatives in state governments and schools. Considering the impact. Anti-DEI legislation has restricted some of her clients who work for state tourism offices from using language associated with DEI, said panelist Melissa Cherry. Cherry is the Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer at Miles Partnership, where she leads the tourism and travel marketing firm's DEI consulting practice. She recently put together a business case demonstrating DEI's value for a client who was being challenged by its governing council, she said. That's always interesting to me, Cherry said, because there's no data that actually says DEI negatively impacts the work. Cherry also shared the results of a survey conducted by Miles Partnership with future partners, which showed that slightly more than half of planners said that divisive state and local laws have caused them to reconsider destinations for their meetings. Survey results showed that 45% would reconsider meeting destinations because of concerns over racial equality, and 44% would reconsider destinations over concerns about gender equality. Jason Dunn, the executive director of the 41-year-old National Coalition of Black Meeting Professionals, said he sees the backlash against DEI affecting both destination and association members. Cities, including those that are an island of blue and otherwise red conservative states, stand to miss out on conventions that will avoid destinations based on political issues, Dunn said. And many of his association's members have seen budget slash, he said, because of how the association's markets are pigeonholed. I think diversity is, in some minds, exclusively Black, he said, which is not the case at all. Many people perceive DEI as a Black and transgender issue because they're the ones who are targeted a lot of the time, Jang said. I think it's important to understand that this impacts a lot of people. It's also the entire LGBTQIA community, she added, as well as the Black, Latinx, Hispanic, Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander communities, and people with disabilities and women. What's in a name? Cherry suggested that a debate around language, calling an initiative DEI as opposed to diversity and inclusion, or DEIAB, for diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, could distract from the actual work of creating more diverse organizations. When we get caught up in all these different acronyms, we're losing sight, Cherry said. This is really about understanding what that work looks like and then being accountable for and actually completing that work. If you can do the work, you can do the work regardless of what you call it, Dunn agreed, as long as there are metrics that move the needle. But removing the word equity from DEI concerned him, he added. Dunn, who was the first Black vice president at Visit Cincinnati, remembers a time when Black business event executives held C-suite titles but had no budgets and no real power to create change, he said. He also understands, he said, the dilemma faced by DMOs in states where just using the words diversity, equity, and inclusion cause conflict. I would hope that as we have these discussions, that people are not scared to talk about the elephant in the room, said Dunn, which is race and ethnicity and the staggering inequalities of resources and hiring levels. I would just ask the industry to take a deep breath. And then let's determine who we want to be and how we want to show up. I think that's the thing that will make our industry that much more relevant in the long term. The continuing case for DEI. On a website page describing its diversity and inclusion commitments, the Society of Human Resource Management, SHRM, includes survey results that show that nearly 7 out of 10 working Americans said the results of corporate diversity programs were, quote, mixed at best. 10% of survey respondents said that such programs have actually done more harm than good. But the consulting firm, McKinsey & Company, paints a very different picture in its December 2023 report, Diversity Matters Even More, The Case for Holistic Impact, which analyzed the relationship between leadership diversity and company performance across 23 countries and 6 global regions. The business case, the report said, is the strongest it has been since we've been tracking diversity. That's been since 2015. The report drew on a data set that spanned 1,265 companies and included company interviews. Among the report's findings, there is a 39% increased likelihood of financial outperformance for those companies in the top quartile of ethnic representation on their executive team versus companies in the bottom quartile. The business case for gender diversity on executive teams has more than doubled over the past decade. Since 2015, the likelihood that companies where the executive team was in the top quartile for gender diversity would outperform those in the bottom quartile grew from 15% to 39%. And across all industries surveyed, more diversity in boards and executive teams was correlated to higher positive impact on communities, workforces, and the environment.
As usual, you'll find all the links in the show notes. If you enjoyed this episode, do give us a 5-star review and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. For more industry insights, visit pcma.org/convene. Stay inspired, keep inspiring, and until next time.